Yo, what's going on, guys? This is Anthony and E-Man. We're back here with a new episode of The Correct Opinion, and this time we have quite a few topics. So yeah, it's been an interesting week, kind of slow week, but an interesting week nonetheless. There's been a lot of movie news that's been coming out. I still kind of want to touch on some of these breaking news, but I'm gonna let it rock. First thing I did want to talk about is I want to stay kind of true to our conversations around these Marvel movies and these Marvel series. So the first thing is that there's a rumor going around right now that the new Echo series that's going to be coming to Disney Plus is actually, I don't know, like a Trojan horse for maybe the return of Daredevil. So
I mean, the return, we already kind of got him. Spoiler alert! In Spider-Man: No Way Home, he's here.
Yeah, but maybe this is the next time that we'll see the character. Right, so now that Echo has made her debut in the Hawkeye series, as long with, you know, spoiler alert, Wilson Fisk, and those characters are tightly tied together. It seems almost natural to think that if not for Daredevil himself, maybe some of the characters from the Daredevil world have an opportunity to come back in the Echo show. Like I would love to see Night Nurse, right, make her way into this.
Isn't that Rosario Dawson?
Like, yeah, she's already in the MCU, right? We don't need to find her another role. She has one.
I mean, she's technically not in the MCU yet, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Because like all these Netflix characters, technically, I think we're just seeing their variants. Kingpin, Daredevil, Charlie Cox. I think we're just seeing the MCU variant version, and the Netflix version exists in another universe. Because if you try and make those stories sync up, it ain't gonna work. You're gonna have problems. So you can't say that they came straight from Netflix here. I'm just saying in terms of canon. Because I know people get confused, like, but it's the same actor. No. The stories don't make sense. The casting doesn't make sense. You cannot make the Netflix stuff continuous. It just would not work.
I think Marvel is just going to wave their hand and wink and nod, right? It's going to be like how they don't have a Spider-Man origin, just no Uncle Ben, right? It's just kind of they're here now, and then
they're doing an animated series on Spider-Man, and this is going to be kind of his prequel to before Civil War. So that's going to be the Disney Plus series. Maybe we get to see how he becomes Spider-Man. Maybe, there was a prevailing theory out there that since there isn't an Oscorp around in the MCU, maybe that radioactive spider came from Stark Industries. Maybe that's how Tony was able to follow him and see what was going on. I don't know.
I mean, we only saw Peter at one Stark Expo, but he does have this like weird infatuation and idealism or iconism towards Tony Stark. So I could see that.
Sure. Because I don't think unless he went to like Justin Hammer or or AIM, but I don't think they would do that.
They don't have to tie it to like one of these well-known established companies, but I can see why they would. They could just as easily say it was at a Roxxon science fair. They like to put Roxxon in when they don't want to associate it with a well-known company. Yeah. So, these to me are like still really fun ways for Marvel to be able to just bring in these characters, bring back that cast, and just not necessarily acknowledge and confirm the Netflix series where in the MCU is just ignore it. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was, well, you brought this one up to me, Letitia Wright.
Yeah, that was breaking news. I haven't heard it anywhere else. It's only on the BBC that is saying this. And it's kind of confusing, right? Because they're saying that Letitia Wright and production has resumed on Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Now, the reason why this is confusing is because just last month, a memo was released by the top dogs, Kevin Feige, Nate Moore, Luis Esposito, and they all said that they were going to delay production by a couple of months because apparently Letitia Wright's injuries were more severe than they thought, and they wanted to give her more time to heal. Okay, but then when that started happening, people were kind of like getting against her, I guess. Like there was fan backlash and all this stuff, probably because of her, anti-vax beliefs or whatever. And then all of a sudden, one of the big trades came out. I think it was Hollywood Reporter. They came out and was like, oh, we've been informed by Disney, by Marvel, that they're going to resume production next month, as in January. Well, wait a minute. I thought y'all just said that you needed 4 or 5 months to help Letitia get healthy because she had a concussion, a laceration, a shoulder, and all.
Nah, I think it was the Kyrie effect.
Oh, where the situation pushed the circumstance.
Yeah, her injury was, they now require that people on set be vaccinated. Right? So now they needed another 3 months.
I mean, that was
so it's like
that was something suspected that they would bend the rules and just be like, hey, you know what? We got too much riding on this. Look, she will get tested every hour. Just show up.
Yeah, so
maybe.
And that could be their compromise, right? That she just tests frequently.
Yeah. I mean, listen, as I've said many times, for different situations, Marvel can do whatever they want.
I mean, how can they not? They are one of the largest companies in the world.
But people act like Marvel is so restrained and that so confined that they have to do. I'm like, they don't even operate like other movie studios. You name another studio that is able to go partner with another big name studio and make $1 billion movie like they did. They change production. They change
studios do
scripts.
that, but they don't do that anymore. Right?
No,
it's rare that
they would do it with smaller brands, right?
They did it with like Titanic. They do it with James Cameron movies. They do that. They do it. It's just not a common practice.
I'm just saying, you don't take the big dogs going with the big dogs. You might take smaller independent production. So like, hey, we're Warner Brothers. We'll work
Titanic
with Ava DuVernay.
I think it was a combination of Paramount, Fox, and I think one other studio. It wasn't just one thing. They used to do that under the right circumstances.
Right. I'm just saying it's not common practice.
Hell no. And I bet
definitely not
Kevin Feige and company are cutthroat about this, right? Like they are really about not sharing money. Yeah. They are absolutely about not sharing money. They want to make sure that the profits stay in-house as much as possible.
Yeah. So I mean, given what they did with Sony, I think they made a smart compromise because, as we've said, there's more money on the merchandise.
There's few concessions, right? Yeah. The Hulk, bench him. Forget it. He's an Avenger now.
He's getting a solo movie, though.
When did the Hulk come out?
Oh wait.
That was 14 years ago, right? So
I mean, it was tied up with Universal. They didn't want to give it up.
No, Universal just wanted to do profit sharing, and Disney didn't.
I mean, for whatever reason, the deal just didn't go through.
If Marvel wanted to make the deal go through, they could have made the deal go through. They made a deal with Sony for Spider-Man. They're not going to make that deal with Universal for the Hulk, right?
Right.
So you and I have talked about how much Marvel loves Spider-Man. They'll do things. They'll take a loss.
Yeah.
It feels like for Spider-Man. Like they literally did all the heavy lifting for the first 2 Spider-Man movies and only made like a small percentage of the box office and then all the merchandise. And the merchandise is nice, but they really wanted that box office.
Oh, for sure.
Right. But even still, even though they weren't going to get the box office money, the kind of deal that they would do for Spider-Man, they wouldn't do with other characters. You're not, they were just like, you know what? Screw it. We're not making a deal with you, Fox. We're going to buy you. Right. That's the only compromise we're making here. Right. Because we're not going to work with you. We don't want to. And we don't have to. We're just going to buy you and, go about it that way.
Yeah.
How many years did people say they wanted to see the MCU crossover with the X-Men?
Oh, for the longest.
Right. So anyway, Kevin Feige Marvel, that they weren't doing that deal. They could have done that deal. They have the power to do anything they want. And now we're seeing them flex their power with Letitia Wright returning to the production for Black Panther.
Yep. So, hey, all power to them. Let them do what they do.
So I'm going to segue a little bit to a little other topic. So Kevin Feige, I'm curious about the quality of the stuff coming out of Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And not just from the MCU. Like, one thing that's been a real big gripe for me, and I know you don't really read it as much or read it or hear about it as much, but I've noticed personally, like, the quality of comic books have really gone down in recent years.
Okay.
Like, you know, a couple years ago, I would be able to go to you and say, "Hey, did you hear about that Spider-Verse story?" And you'd be like, "Yeah, I heard of it. Yeah,
right."
That
Even if I ain't read it, I heard of
it.
Yeah,
right. You know, hey, did you hear Sam Wilson's Captain America? You know, hey, did you hear this? Now it's like, when was the last time you heard anything about Spider-Man?
Spider-Man, not so much, but like, you know what?
I know who you heard about. Hold on. When was the last time you heard anything about the Avengers? In the comics, right? Or Thor.
I didn't even know they were still doing stuff.
Right. So I know who you have heard about, because it's the one property that's been on.
That's all they doing. That's all they checking out. Right? Yeah, that's it.
These mutants are the MVPs right now.
Yeah, facts.
Right? They just put the comic company on their back and started running. So
yeah,
that's all a credit to Jonathan Hickman, who and this
trying
is
to get that GOAT
else.
status.
You know, here's something else that bothers me. Because I don't know if you noticed, but Jonathan Hickman is leaving X-Men.
Oh, really? Well, yeah, because this was like his swan song, right? Like, this was his main. No,
he's cutting his story short and leaving.
Oh, that's terrible. Because the way he does his long form storytelling, you want him to finish it. Oh, that's not a good sign.
So they're saying it's because the kind of way he reinvented the way the X-Men are in the comic, with them being on their own island and being independent and having more of this independence to them, as far as not relying on or depending on humans to accept them. The writers themselves say, like, yo, we love the Krakoa name, like the other writers, and he wanted to kind of shift things. He's like, listen, this is a 3-part arc. Yeah. These first 3-4 years, this is part 1. I'm ready to move on to part 2. And they were like, chill, dog. We're having way too much fun in Krakoa, because it sounds like you're going to burn the place down. Let us do more stories with Krakoa. And he's saying, all right, well, if you guys are going to do that, then I'm going to just exit out right now. I'm going to change my story a little bit so I can say this is my last book. And he just did his last book like 2 weeks ago. It was called Inferno. It was fantastic. It was, oh my gosh, it was fantastic.
Damn.
And
but it leaves the door open, I'm assuming, for others to step in.
So that he did put together like a good team of writers and editors, and he was in charge of like that whole X-Men section of Marvel.
Yeah.
And he put together his own group of people. Now they're going to run and continue to tell stories on their own. And he's saying, you know, never say never. You never know if I'll come back and move on to progress to the next part of my story.
So when they're in trouble, they'll call them.
Yeah. But the question I have kind of is, because there's been a little bit of another exodus of writers and talent away from Marvel recently, and a lot of them like to dibble and dabble into independent stuff, because honestly they want to see if they can make some money, right? They don't make long-term money drawing and writing comics. They make, you know, day-to-day money, like get by money. At least a majority of them do.
Yeah.
They want to make that, you know, Invincible money, right? They want to get that Walking Dead money. They want to get that Todd McFarlane money, right? So they're not going to get that at Marvel, because they don't get to own the characters they create for Marvel, but they do get to do that if they go independent. So a lot of them are trying independent stuff again. And that's where Jonathan Hickman and a lot of other popular writers and artists are going. A lot of them are going to this thing called Substack. I'm still trying to figure that out. but a lot of them are going independent. And part of me has noticed that if you look back to when it was announced that Kevin Feige was taking over Marvel Comics, I personally noticed, and maybe I'm biased because you know how I feel about Feige having so much control. But I've noticed a change in the quality of the books. I've started reading less books. Some of the books that I did enjoy that were starting to get going got canceled. Like Ghost Rider got canceled out of nowhere when it was actually good. Like I could never tell you there was a good Ghost Rider story. This one was actually good. And they cut it short. Wow. So it's like X-Men head leaving, Marvel comic stories changing, Miles Morales. Oh my gosh. Everything that they've done with Miles Morales over the past 2 years is just heartbreaking. Have you seen his new costume?
I think so. Is that the one where it lights up a little?
No, the one with it's like a hoodie.
Oh, I didn't know if that was fan art or not, but if it's the one that's kind of like a hoodie blended with his uniform, I thought that looked dope.
It's like a hoodie with a uniform, and the hoodie goes like this over his face, and
I thought that was dope. That's because he vaxxed up. He trying to be responsible.
I don't think it's an improvement over his last costume.
Oh, don't do that.
I don't.
Okay.
I think it's like when they changed Peter Parker's costume to like something else, and it's like, all right, that looks cool for a second, but this ain't gonna be forever, is it? Right? Like certain characters have that costume that's so closely associated with their identity that if you mess with it too much or you radically alter it, you might alienate fans. Remember, case in point, whenever they try to touch Superman's costume, any single time they try to do something different with Superman's costume, it's like, why though?
Yeah, this is true. Although I didn't mind the Man of Steel update, that didn't bother me
because they reverted some of the changes that they were going to do. Right? He didn't get the neck collar. He was going to get a neck collar that he was going to wear. He was going to get like his sleeves going down his fingers or something. It was. They had to change it back, or change it a little bit more closely to the classic interpretation because it just wasn't being accepted by fans. It was getting bad reaction.
Well.
Yeah.
Well.
Anyway, that was just my little rant on Kevin Feige taking over Marvel Comics. It's for anybody who's watching this that reads the books, I'm sure you guys are feeling it too. I wanted to just let them know, like, yo, I'm with you. Moving right along. So there was a couple other things. Tom Holland. I love talking about Tom Holland. He's like one of my favorite topics. So Tom Holland there's a rumor going around that Tom Holland is under consideration to, along with Pete Davidson, to host the Oscars.
Whack.
And it's just like, all right, Pete Davidson, I get, right?
I guess.
Well, more often than not, they used to go for somebody who could do comedy to host the Oscars, right? Yeah. It wasn't an outright comedian. It was somebody who could, do some comedy, right? And they had Anne Hathaway and James Franco try one year, right?
But we know James Franco ain't coming back.
No. What do you think about the idea of either Tom Holland or even Pete Davidson hosting the Oscars? Like, I know how we feel about the Oscars, but what about these two hosting it?
Here's my thing. I think that if Pete Davidson wasn't dating, Kim Kardashian, he would never be in a consideration, just like he's never been in consideration before. I personally would not want Tom Holland to do it, primarily because I don't think that non-comedians make for a good fit for a host. Now, the reason why I say that is because usually comedians will be more willing to push the envelope. They don't sound as scripted as actors do. And I think one of the best things, if you even care to watch these award shows, is a comedian is able to improvise. If something just wild happens, they're able to improvise, but you want them to improvise in a smart, good way. I think Pete Davidson would go up there and say some wild stuff and never get invited back to the Oscars ever again. You know, like I would not be surprised if some Janet Jackson, Justin Timberlake mess happens, you know, under his watch. And I'm not saying these two would be the same, but like, you know, I saw how like Anthony Mackie, for example, he was hosting, I forget what awards it was, and it was like, you know, it just wasn't all that good. You know, it was just one of those things where like he would say a funny joke here or there, but you knew that joke came from somebody else, some other writer, and it just didn't feel natural. Now you compare that with classic stuff with Billy Crystal, Ricky Gervais, Ellen, you know, those are usually the best because even in between some of the sets or whatever, like Ellen doing the huge, crazy impromptu selfie with like all the stars, you know, just little or Ricky Gervais out there blasting everybody. And I want to say he even blasted Harvey Weinstein before Harvey was known to be a terrible person, you know. So, you know, or Seth from Family Guy, MacFarlane, you know, like those, you want that level of creativity and improvisation, and not just like the next best person. Like the only actor I might be okay with, and I think he did this before, might have been The Rock, but that's also because The Rock is like a really talented individual and entertainer. You know,
Rock is like the Mario Lopez of acting.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like anything. He could do anything. Right? He could do anything. So, you know, his mic skills from the WWE alone are enough proof that he could do stuff on the drop of a dime, improvise if need be, and still keep it professional. I'm sorry, I'm just not checking for Tom Holland like that. Man, can we just acknowledge this? Can we just acknowledge this? Tom Holland is not. And I mean this with the utmost respect. He's not a star outside of being Spider-Man. Maybe when he becomes Nathan Drake and the Uncharted series, if that takes off. But outside of that, despite the many movies that he's done, thanks to being Spider-Man and his exposure, he's not top tier like that. Like people are not saying, yo, there's a new Tom Holland movie, let's go run and buy those tickets. Now, if it's a Spider-Man movie, we out there, we breaking box offices. Wasn't nobody rushing to go see Cherry. Wasn't nobody rushing to go see Chaos, whatever it was on Netflix. Funny,
right? That weird effect that some actors have. It's like they can make this character bankable, right?
Yes.
You know,
or Andrew is Garfield, it the character that's bankable in itself?
Andrew Garfield and Sony didn't make this character this bankable, but Tom Holland did.
I don't know if that was. I think those are two different things. I think both of those. So the issue was never Spider-Man. The issue was always production. My analogy I wanted to make there was that they could be so bankable inside this franchise, but the moment they step away, quiet. Like Tobey Maguire had that issue, right? Whenever he went and did Seabiscuit or whatever it was in between Spider-Man, nobody cared. Yeah. A lot of stuff Andrew Garfield has done since Spider-Man, I haven't watched. Like if I saw him in a movie, it was by accident. You know? He's not bad. I don't want to take nothing away from Andrew Garfield because I'm
not saying he's bad. I'm just saying I didn't look for movies from him. Right. When I would look for other movies and he would be in it, it was a pleasant surprise. It was by accident.
And shout out to Tick Tick Boom because that was actually a pretty decent movie with Andrew Garfield. But no, I think this is just a situation where the role
Tick,
is,
Boom?
Huh?
You watched Tick Tick Boom?
Yeah. I didn't finish it, but it was a good movie. It was good up until I'm just not that into musicals, but from everything else, I got like an hour and a half, like an hour into it, something like that. But it was good. I just haven't finished it. That's all. But I would just say that this is just a situation where the character clearly supersedes the actors, all of them. Spider-Man is bigger than all three actors.
Clearly, I think Tom Holland has made some really good friends or tight-knit relationships within the Sony studios.
And Marvel. And Marvel. Because the Russo brothers gave him a shot.
Russo brothers gave him a shot. Kevin Feige has his phone number.
Yep.
And when the deal between Marvel and Sony broke down, he went to Amy's house. He went to Amy Pascal's house. Like, it was like pleading with her.
Yep.
So there's another rumor going around that Tom Holland also met with Sony to talk about taking on the role of a young James Bond.
That would be terrible. That would be terrible. I'm sorry.
It would be interesting to let him do a movie with his actual accent, right? He could talk
like a young James Bond, like
young James Bond.
Remember that cartoon, James Bond Jr.?
James Bond Jr.
James Bond Jr. I remember watching that mess. Yeah. I thought it was gonna do something, and I was like, "It's not."
Never did. Never did. But you know, honestly, here's what I was thinking. Absolutely not as a movie, but as like a series on Disney Plus or something, or some other streaming platform. Tom Holland as a young James Bond. I would watch an episode. I wouldn't say I would say no. I'm gonna watch it. I mean, now, if you tell me about the movie, I'm gonna wait for it to come to streaming anyway. But if you put it on streaming to begin with, you have a better chance with me. That's all I'm saying.
That's rough, man. That's rough. That's rough. I don't know. I'm gonna have to see. They're gonna have to have some dope trailers, but I mean, seriously, like Tom Holland's like he's in his 20s, I want to say, and he can still play a teenager. Like, what James Bond are you showing us? Is he gonna wear a white suit
James
too, or
Bond Jr.?
Like, I don't, bro. I don't care. Yeah. I don't care.
That's the only thing I could see them doing, right? Just
I don't.
All of a sudden, somebody there thinks James Bond Jr. is a franchise worth bringing back with Tom Holland.
I think that's a mistake.
Look, somebody there thought that Mark Wahlberg shouldn't be Nathan Drake, or anybody else. They thought Tom Holland should be Nathan Drake. So let's just take that and think about that when it comes to how they make decisions there.
Now, to be fair, that Nathan Drake is supposed to be like much younger, right? And I think that's only because, what's that dude's name? Nate Fillion, is it? I think it was only because like he just wasn't, or maybe he's slightly aged out of the role, maybe.
There's so many people you can give that to.
Because like
I would even
he's
took
been
Ryan
the leading
Reynolds.
candidate.
I would have even took Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds would have been a fine Nathan Drake.
He could, but my issue with Ryan Reynolds is, as funny as he is, as great of an actor as
he has no range.
He has no range. Like Ryan Reynolds is Ryan Reynolds, and it's sad because I've seen Ryan Reynolds in older things, and I'm like, you could be great if you weren't so comfortable. Yeah. Like he gets very comfortable and he sticks to his lane.
That's fine. Because I would love for him to have range, but he's finding success in his lane.
That's what I'm saying. There's no reason for him to push, because he does what he does, and it works.
Above averagely well. Mint Mobile, like, wow. Who starts a phone company, right? But as far as the whole James Bond thing and Tom Holland and all of his activities with Sony, you know, this company, this is how they make decisions. They sat on the Uncharted movie for years when they originally had Mark Wahlberg in the lead with who's going to play Sully? I think it was Robert De Niro.
Really?
Robert De Niro was going to play Sully.
Oh, wow.
This was years ago, and he was going to be, like, if you played the video games, Sully is an older dude. He's not somebody that takes place.
I've never played the game, so I don't know.
Nah, he's more of like the older mentor that doesn't go out on missions anymore, but he tells, you know, Nathan, you know, where the treasures are. He helps him solve the clues. Gotcha. And there were sections inside the games where you played as a young Nathan Drake as via flashbacks to give like backstory between him and his brother. So like there are times when you play as a 12-year-old Nathan Drake, but never like a 20-year-old Nathan Drake. The cool thing about it and the potential for Tom Holland taking on the Uncharted film is that, you know, if it does franchise, something that they did in this game that they also did in the Metal Gear games is they aged the protagonist. So every time they made a new Uncharted game, he's like 10 years older than he was. And he's like showing his age, and you like hear it in his character and things like that. So like first he starts on his 20s, then he's in his mid 30s, then he's like in his 40s, and he's like, all right, This is the last.
I can't
game.
keep jumping out these damn planes.
Yeah, right. So he's like, all right. So it would be cool in that sense if they decide to like, space these movies out like every 6 years or something.
Then again, you could just leave it to Tom Holland. Like he could.
He can age with the character. That's what I mean.
That's what I'm saying. If you want to make a franchise with somebody, you do it with someone that literally looks much younger than they actually are, right? Because that's the way you get that longevity. Right now, Tom Holland he's in a perfect sweet spot. Dude has like no facial hair. I don't even think he can grow facial hair. I don't know. He has no like dominant features that will like age terribly. Maybe he'll get some wrinkles in his eyes, maybe, but he can play a franchise role, whether it's Spider-Man, whether it's Drake. He can play those roles for a long time. So I could see that being the business decision, saying like, hey, if Uncharted does well, and let's just say, Spider-Man flops for whatever, which it will probably never do. We got Tom Holland for like the next 10, 15, 20 years. Right. And he could keep playing that because even in his 50s, he'll probably look like he's still in his 30s or 40s and maybe even have like a Paul Rudd thing going on.
I think he's starting to show some of his age now. But you're right.
I mean, he doesn't look like a straight kid anymore. No. Now he looks like a high school. No, he looks like a college student.
Yeah. So that's going to be good because, the next Spider-Man movie, it's probably going to take place in college. And we're all intents and purposes, we're getting a Spider-Man movie in 2024, right?
They said, here's the thing. Kevin Feige said that they're in development for the next one. But you don't listen to Kevin Feige. You listen to Amy Pascal. Because Amy Pascal no longer works for Sony. She's like independent. No, she's independent. She's fired,
just not the CEO anymore.
Right. I'm just saying she's no longer. She works with them because she has her own independent thing. But yes, she is under obviously the Spider-Man thing now. But you listen to her because she has more to gain by making sure the Sony the Sony Spider-Man stuff works. She has way more to gain, whereas Marvel has more to lose if things get leaked. Sony might. Amy has everything to gain. So you listen to her, and what did she say? She was like, "Oh yeah, while Feige said we working on the next Spider-Man 4, she was like, we working on the next trilogy. Yep. We doing a trilogy up in this." So I'm looking at her and I'm like, yo, if y'all know you're doing a trilogy, personally, if it was me, back to back to back to back. Shoot them suckers as close as possible so you can get that together.
They don't have to do that. I mean,
they don't have to. I'm just saying.
We talked about it. Like when Marvel wants to do something, they do it. When did
I agree.
When did Homecoming come out?
2016?
2017.
17.
When did the next Far From Home came out? 2019.
2 years. Yeah.
And then Homecoming was 2 years after that.
Yep.
So Marvel has the ability to put out movies every 2 years with a franchise. It's just they only do it for Spider-Man.
Yeah, because they sure don't do it for Black Panther.
Or anybody else. Or Doctor Strange. They do it for Ant-Man. Ant-Man gets movies.
Well, he got 3 years. It was 2015 then 2018.
I mean, that's still faster than like Thor. Well,
Thor was struggling too. Thor didn't seem like a money maker until Thor Ragnarok. So there was definite good hesitation with Thor.
They produced Spider-Man in a short amount of time. Yeah, it's not even something that they profited from. So
but they also knew from an early time, because even the Russo brothers said this. I want to say even recently, they were like, Spider-Man's going to become the soul of the MCU, kind of like how Tony Stark was. So I think for Marvel, they always, and here's the thing, even if you're talking about the comics, Spider-Man is usually the most popular figure. So it was more of an investment. They knew like, hey, let's prove to Sony that we can make this movie. It'll be great. It'll be, $1 billion, make y'all money, but we're going to make him the new centerpiece and it's going to blow up. And
it's incredibly
it's doing
mind blowing to me that they're taking a character they don't own the rights to and making it their centerpiece. especially under such short notice. Especially under incredibly short notice. They literally altered the trajectory of Marvel Studios for this character. I said
from, what was it?
Civil War wasn't supposed to have him.
From Homecoming, I was like, Marvel or Disney, they need to bite the bullet and buy Spider-Man's rights back straight up. They needed to just say, like, from that point on, because now the value of Spider-Man has increased significantly. I was like, yo, back in 2017 when we saw, or in 2016 when we saw him in Civil War, Marvel's or Disney should have been like, yo, here's $10 billion.
It probably
$10 billion.
I don't know if we go through those email leaks, we probably could see some.
I wonder if they
offers.
did. I mean, personally, I would have lowballed them, but like, here's $4 billion, because y'all are not gonna hit $4 billion even if you tried. But I would definitely be like, here's $10 billion, and we about to milk the mess out of Spider-Man.
You know why? Where they messed up was with the first Avengers movie. Once the Avengers 1 hit like $1 billion, it was like, all right, Sony is never giving you this character for cheap, because you guys will obviously, this is more valuable.
Money. But that's why I said, like, you give them $10 billion, and they should have done that right after The Amazing Spider-Man didn't do well, because that would have been they should have never done this deal. That's what I'm saying. They should have never done the deal
for Disney and Marvel to do. If you're not like, I try to imagine like the people who invest, the shareholders, and the people who are like ignorant to Marvel, right? Sure. Just absolutely, I have no interest in it. I just need my check. Just give me my dividends. I'm going back to my yacht. Those type of shareholders. How do you explain to them that you're going to drop $10 billion for Spider-Man?
Because one, you got to get the rights back. Two, you're not just getting Spider-Man, you're getting all the other characters.
That's a tough explanation.
No, it's really not, because once you see how successful, and I'm saying they could have just done this with the Spider-Man cameo in Civil War, just to show people, look at all this excitement. Imagine what we can do with this. But you have to appease Sony first.
$10 billion would have been.
How much did they just pay? But how much did they just pay for the Fox deal? How much did they just pay?
50 billion, 70 billion, something crazy, right?
But the thing is, they paid
that was
for that.
All of Fox.
It was all of Fox
and Discovery,
but it also included,
like, it came with television stations.
I'm telling you, Spider-Man movies if Marvel were to take Spider-Man movies on their own, they could recoup that $10 billion within just a couple years.
No. I'm not talking about them being able to recoup it. How do you even convince these guys to buy it? Right?
That's the point. Not only are you going to recoup it, but you're going to make more money on it later. It's not. I think it's not a hard sell.
Right? Because
I know what you're saying. How do you get your shareholders to buy in and you don't get fired by even bringing up the idea?
Like, we're just going to drop 20 billion, 10, 20 billion on one character.
But it's not one character. It's not one character.
I hear you.
That wouldn't be pitch.
You can't sit there and be like, all right, hey, have you guys ever heard of Spider-Man? They're like, yeah, I heard of him. Like, yo, we want to make his movies. It's going to cost $40 billion. Like,
that's not okay. Right, that's not the pitch. That's not the pitch. That's a terrible pitch. The pitch goes, hey, look at this. We have a Spider-Man franchise that we will pay $10 billion for, but we will earn 20 to 30 billion on later, not only on the movies, but also the merchandise and all the other TV properties that we can do.
If it was before the Avengers came out, it would be a tough sell to share.
Yes, if it was at that point.
After the Avengers came out, Sony's raising the price. It's not going to be a $10 billion character.
They don't have that much to go off of if you're doing this right after they did a subpar performance in Amazing Spider-Man, which was
because they're not going off of the Spider-Man performances. They're going to compare it with Marvel movie performances, and they're going to sit there and say, all right, whatever's the highest Marvel movie you can earn, that's probably what you're going to do.
The Avengers came out before they flopped with Amazing Spider-Man 2. They're going to crumble, as most studios do.
That's what I'm saying. So they're saying, look,
they'll get pressure from the negative reviews and the lackluster box office numbers. So when that pressure hits them and they make a lackluster movie and somebody comes and says, hey, let's not only give you more than what you normally would make, but we'll give you more that you would ever make in the next 5 to 10, 15 years, and you could take that 10 billion, invest it in other stuff, and be fine.
That's not a smart decision, and that was the type of stuff that'll get somebody fired.
It wouldn't have been smart for
Sony would have,
but it would have been smart for Marvel and Disney.
Yes, but whoever orchestrated that deal at Sony would absolutely get fired, and their children would be fired. Right? Probably. That's a terrible deal for Sony.
No, I agree. Look, it's just like how Facebook, before they went public, they were offered $4 billion.
Yeah, right.
And then later on, it was like, nah, we really worth like 20, 30, 40 billion, whatever.
Yeah, way more than that.
Yeah.
So it's like, but I think Sony is cognizant of the value of Spider-Man, even though they're messing up, right? They know that's the reason they rebooted the Amazing Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man made like $700 million.
Yeah.
That's not million dollars.
That's not good.
That's exactly my point, right? Because if you were to say
that's underperforming for one of the most popular fictional heroes out there.
Absolutely, but that was still at the time, I think, one of Sony's highest grossing films.
Sure.
Of all time.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like
even something that is like, all right, this is a success, it's a failure because the potential is to do more.
Think about it like this.
Measuring
how long? Let's say they never do the deal, right? Let's say they never do the deal after Amazing Spider-Man 2, and their movies are averaging. Their Spider-Man movies, their biggest sellers, are averaging $600 to $700 million a piece.
Yes,
at most. How long do you think it'll take them to get to that 10 billion mark?
That's not what I'm saying. But
that's what I'm asking you.
So
how long do you think it would take them?
Again? They would just reboot it again. Maybe
let them reboot it. I'm asking you, even if they reboot it.
Because let's say they rebooted it and they did 1 billion on the third try without Marvel. Then it would have been a lot faster. I have no idea. I can speculate because they were breaking box offices and making superhero movies before anybody thought anybody should, right? With the Sam Raimi trilogy. And they did do successful enough to lay the foundation for Kevin Feige to follow, right? Kevin Feige sat there, watched what Sony did.
Movies. They made great movies, and they made
Kevin Feige watched what Sony did and learned from it to make the MCU.
Sure.
So I hear you that Sony definitely has been dropping the ball, but
there's nothing to suggest that
they are the godfathers of this superhero genre.
Well, first of all, shout out to Blade. Let's not disrespect Blade, because Blade was before Sam Raimi did anything.
He was, but Sam Raimi blew it out the park.
Sure. Pick up the ball and run with it. That's all good. But what I'm saying though is like, let's not act like Sony didn't have ups and downs. Sony made 2 great Spider-Man movies with, Tobey Maguire, and then all of a sudden they did a terrible bomb as well. Then they made 2 mediocre movies with Andrew Garfield. It's not like they were sitting here like one was a hit, one was a failure, one was a hit. They were not going in a positive trajectory.
Yeah, Spider-Man made money. They were going to make Spider-Man 4. The only reason they didn't make Spider-Man 4 with Sam Raimi is because they didn't like Raimi. So it was like, even though
they did them bogus.
Even though things could be critically panned, if they make enough money, they'll move forward. Amazing Spider-Man
look at Venom.
Yeah. And Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 weren't the most critically loved films, but they didn't make as much money as Spider-Man 3 with Sam Raimi did.
2 is still hell. Oh, you talking about Amazing Spider-Man?
Yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 didn't make as much money as Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, and then it made them look bad because they were saying that they could just make Spider-Man movies without him. They got the magic formula. They are almost approaching $1 billion.
Yeah.
So anyway, Sony has potential to make money with Spider-Man. They were on track to make $1 billion with Spider-Man 4.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Sony absolutely, they could make money with Spider-Man. They know the value of the character. They're absolutely not going to give it to Marvel for cheap.
Mm-mm.
And they never would have. And they're absolutely going to continue to exercise their right to keep putting out Spider-Man movies in the amount of time to retain the rights for this character.
Mm-hmm.
So Spider-Man 2024.
We'll see.
I mean, if all they got to do is keep the pattern up every 2 years.
I agree.
right?
I mean, it's clearly a moneymaker. I mean, like every movie has made more money than the next one under Marvel. So, look, I've said from the jump, Marvel has made the best business proposition with this deal because, we don't know the specifics of the future deals, but in the past it was kind of like, yo, let us make Homecoming, you keep all the profits, we'll take care of everything else, and then they kind of went with a similar deal in the second one, Far From Home, and then this one it was like, hey, we're gonna go 50-50 on the production, and we'll just take home like a slightly, I want to say it was like 25% instead of the 5% before from the box office. So I wonder what the new structure will be, because they said it's supposedly a case-by-case basis. At least that's what Tom Holland said. He said the conversation, it's now an open
his
conversation.
Contract is up. His contract
is
up
coming
too,
back.
So is that.
Listen,
of course he is. He needs to, he's got a posture. So
he's coming back. Amy already said like, yo, Tom Holland, we gonna do more with him. So
yeah. So
I think that contract is already signed.
Maybe. Anyway, these Spider-Man films, they'll keep coming. It still blows my mind that they're willing to make Spider-Man the center of their universe, even though they don't own the character.
It's risky business, man. Then again,
companies don't like doing it. Netflix canceled all their Marvel shows because of that.
If you can't control it, and Sony just wakes up and has a bad day one day, they could be like, screw y'all, we ain't gonna do this no more. It could happen. It could totally happen. And then what's Marvel gonna do at that point? I mean, granted, they could still do whatever, but
they were doing fine.
Because technically, everybody.
That's the part that bothers me. They were doing fine without him.
They were
doing better than fine.
Yeah. But
like
I think
Iron Man broke $1 billion. Iron Man
expectations have exceeded with Marvel, where now it's kind of like, ain't no going back. You can't. And I mean, they tried it with Eternals, right? That to me, Eternals is a perfect example of Marvel going a little too deep in the barrel. Like it was what, look, Eternals wasn't even popular with comic fans.
Nah.
So now you trying to bring them onto the stage, and it's kind of like, yo, man, it was barely hitting then. Like, it was cool that you took some C-listers and made them A-listers, but they went to like DEF. Okay.
Yeah. They want to get the characters that they don't have to share profits with as much. Right. So Jack Kirby created the Eternals, and they're being very specific with the characters they choose to adapt, because they have to do profit sharing with some of the co-creators. I know you got to run real quick. I wanted to do one last thing, and I'm gonna let you go. Boba Fett. Are you enjoying Boba Fett? Like, is this?
I am. I don't have very much of an issue with Boba Fett. To be fair, I never had any expectations with this. I was cautious with it. Like, I wasn't looking forward to the very first day. I wasn't staying up until 2:00 in the morning. I'm not doing theory videos and all that stuff. Like, to me, it's just something to do on Wednesday. And the moment I get done talking about it, crack a joke or two about it, and that's it. I don't need nothing else. Like, it's just something to watch. It's not the Mandalorian. We were sitting there blowing up over every episode. Action quality was up there and story was progressing. We was getting new elements and all that. Boba is kind of like, it's cool.
All right. It's all right, I'm gonna just be here. It's just there.
Yeah, it's there. So I got nothing negative against it.
I liked that last season of the Clone Wars more.
Well, I mean, Clone Wars is a superior product. Like, I would rather watch the Clone Wars over any Star Wars movie, like, at all.
We've had this chat before.
Yeah.
Like, look, I'm not a Star Wars fan.
Listen, the Clone Wars and Rebels, that's the only thing that brought me back.
Dave Filoni,
Dave Filoni give him all the monies. Give him
all the money.
Give him.
You know what
everything.
I noticed? He's not a writer on Boba Fett.
Oh,
this is all Jon Favreau and Robert Rodriguez.
Now, I trust Favreau too. Like Favreau,
I do too.
You know, especially what he's doing with Mandalorian. Like, I'm cool with that.
Filoni has a heavy hand in Mandalorian.
I was gonna say, like, he's still no Filoni, but I like if you were to tell me that Filoni is not available, Jon Favreau would be the only other person right now I would trust.
I'm hoping the reason Filoni's not working on Boba Fett is because they're splitting their responsibilities and they're like both the heads of Star Wars.
I think
I hope he's working on Ahsoka.
Yeah, I think so because Ahsoka was all him. That was all him in the Clone Wars. So
that's his character.
If that's the case, let Rodriguez and Favreau take over Boba Fett, but you put your magic all over Ahsoka because that right there is gonna be that is something I have high expectations for, and I am super excited for the Ahsoka show.
I can't wait. With Rosario Dawson. Anyway, that's all I was wondering. Boba Fett is like, it's my Sunday show.
There you go. All right, even though it comes out on Wednesdays.
But yeah, that's all I had. Is anything you wanted to chat about? Any other topics? Any fun stuff?
Nothing I could think of, man. I think that's about it for the week.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining in on another episode. We'll be back next week. It's same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, peace.